In the center of Greybridge, a town most people forgot even existed, stood an old building everyone pretended not to see. The old town hall, abandoned for nearly 70 years, condemned twice and avoided by every local who valued their sleep. During the day, it was just a crumbling relic, cracked pillars, dusty windows, and thick vines choking its stone walls. But at night, when the last shop closed and the final footsteps faded, that's when the real workers arrived. Liv Calder, an amateur paranormal documentary maker, didn't believe the rumors. She lived for content, and when she heard whispers about ghostly office workers who never left their desks, she knew this story could make her channel explode. It was the kind of legend that screamed viral potential. Armed with a high-end camera, a sensitive boom mic, and way too much confidence, Liv slipped inside the derelict building just after twilight. The moment she crossed the threshold, she felt it. The air became too still, too old, too watched. It was as if the entire building took a quiet, collective breath and held it, waiting. The grand entrance hall was cavernous and empty, but faint sounds drifted down from the upper floors, echoing through the desolate corridors. Scratch, scratch. It sounded like dozens of pens moving across paper, like endless mind-numbing paperwork being completed by someone who had no need for sleep. Or maybe someone who was forbidden from it. Liv, ever the investigator, followed the noise. It led her up a creaking marble staircase and down a long hallway lined with dark, imposing office doors. Most were jammed shut, sealed by decades of neglect and rust. But one door, at the very end of the hall, stood slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness inviting her in. Inside, the scratching grew louder, more frantic. She pushed the door gently, its hinges groaning in protest. And there he was. Behind a towering pile of dust-caked filing cabinets sat a translucent figure. He wore a dusty, old-fashioned waistcoat and was hunched over a heavy wooden desk, a quill clutched in his spectral hand, scribbling furiously on aged parchment. His head never lifted, his focus absolute. He wrote as if time itself was chasing him, as if a deadline loomed that could never be met. Liv gasped, a small, sharp intake of breath. The sound, though quiet, shattered the unnatural silence, and the scratching stopped. The ghostly bureaucrat slowly, deliberately turned his head. His face was pale and sunken, his eyes hollowed out pits, like ink wells that had run dry decades ago. He opened his mouth, but instead of breath, a flurry of tiny paper scraps fluttered out, torn pages spilling across the desk like grotesque confetti. A shiver ran down Liv's spine. She felt a presence behind her. Another figure had appeared in the doorway. Then another materialized beside it. And another. An entire office staff, all spectral, all silent, all watching her with those same empty, hollow eyes. They didn't seem angry. They seemed expectant. Liv took a panicked step back, her confidence finally cracking. The first ghost rose from his chair, parchment clinging to his form and dripping from his sleeves like peeling skin. He whispered, but made no sound, his lips moving in slow, deliberate shapes. It was a silent, chilling mouthing of words. Liv glanced down at her camera, heart pounding in her chest. The audio meter was spiking violently, deep into the red zone, even though the room was utterly silent. Her professional instincts kicked in, overriding her fear for just a moment. She pressed the playback button. A distorted, raspy whisper filled her ears. A sound scraped from the very bottom of the void. File her. Suddenly, the room exploded into chaos. Filing cabinets flung themselves open. Ancient folders flew out like a flock of startled birds, pages swirling and swarming around her. They weren't just floating. They were attacking, wrapping around her wrists and throat with a surprising strength. The paper was cold and sharp, dragging her backward toward an old mahogany desk with a single vacant chair, the only seat in the room that still looked oddly warm. The ghosts moved closer, their steps synchronized and silent. They weren't haunting the building in the way she'd imagined. They were maintaining it. The afterlife had given them only one eternal duty. Anyone who enters the old town hall must be added to the registry. It was a bureaucracy that transcended death itself. Liv struggled, but the paper tightened its grip, cutting off her breath. The swirling vortex of documents began to coalesce around her, shadows inking her silhouette onto a large, official-looking form. At the bottom of the document, glowing in faint ethereal silver, words began to appear. Status, new employee. Start date, immediately. End date, never. Her scream was swallowed by the rustling papers, a final, desperate sound absorbed into the endless archives of the forgotten. The next morning, the old town hall looked just as it always did. Silent, empty, forgotten by the waking world. But if you were to stand outside at dusk, just as the last light fades, and you listen very, very closely, you might hear it, a new sound joining the chorus from within. Scratch, scratch, scratch. And if you could peer into the window of Office 3B on the 3rd floor, you might see a new ghost sitting at her desk, still clutching her camera, still filming her eternal silent story for an audience that will never see it.